The story begins with a boy called Errol sitting with his family for lunch. Errol's father feels surprised by how calm his son is, saying he couldn't sleep at all thinking about what hero class he'll get. His mother also exclaims that she's excited, while his older sister feels confident that her brother will outshine all his classmates. Her mother agrees, thinking that her son will attract all the girls with his charm, which makes Errol's sister worry that he'll be taken away from her. However, Errol is more in touch with reality than his family, thinking he'll just turn out to be another average guy. In Errol's world, hero classes are gifts from a higher being granted to youngsters when they turn 10, allowing them to specialize in various skills. Once it's time for the blessing ceremony, all the students gather in school, and a priest begins with the first boy. He puts his hand on the boy's forehead, and the boy quickly sees an image of fire and hammers, confirming that he'll be a blacksmith. The boy runs back to his father, beaming in joy, and the priest starts to work on all the remaining students. Once it's Errol's turn, his sister says that he'll get a special blessing for sure, and he walks up to the priest while his family cheers. People start whispering in envy about Errol, thinking that he'll get advanced classes like his parents, Farah and Leon, who are sword princess and archmage. Once Errol gets close to the priest, he closes his eyes and focuses his mind, but fails to see anything. The priest feels surprised that he doesn't have a blessing and announces that Errol is a rare case of a classless hero. Errol's family instantly loses their excitement, thinking they got totally scammed and that his fate is ruined as a talentless failure. The next day, Errol gets to practicing ordinary swordsmanship. His parents assure him that they won't kick him out of the house. Errol tells them that he's doing fine and just doesn't want to be a freeloader, while his sister promises to keep supporting him. Seeing how concerned his family is, Errol once again reminds them that he has always been practicing swordsmanship with his mother, so he can still be useful despite not having a class. However, he thinks that his mother is an awful teacher because she always blows him away in training with her incredible strength. As he finishes his explanation, Errol's mother feels happy that her son is so wise, while his father thinks that he might actually be able to get a real job. Seeing them all fawn over him, Errol gets sick of his family's attention and leaves to train. As he walks into the training ground, Errol finds two swordsman class students dueling it out with their swords. While fighting, the boys notice Errol and ask what he's doing here without a class. He calmly tells him that he's going to train just like them, but the boys tell him that they're only having fun with their swords since they don't have to train because of their class. Then, they offer to show Errol how much skill they have gained from their class, and start sparring once again. While watching them fight, Errol notices how smooth their movements are because of the swordsman class, and asks them to fight him. One of the boys laughs at his audacity for challenging him without a class, but Errol thinks that he doesn't need one, feeling insulted. The boy accepts Errol's challenge to teach him a lesson. Before fighting, the boy asks Errol to make sure he still has the protection blessing, which is a temporary shield everyone gains at birth that recharges when the user isn't receiving damage. Errol nods and confirms that he won't lose his life to the boy's powerful attacks and tells him to get ready for the duel. Enraged by his constant taunting, the boy charges at Errol and swings his sword, but he easily parries it to his shock. Then, Errol dodges another slash before locking the boy in a parry. The boy's partner thinks he's just having fun and tells him to finish the match, but he tells him that Errol isn't so easy to fight. As they continue trading parries, the boy realizes he can't beat Errol on his own, so he cheats and asks his partner to gang up on him. The other boy jumps at Errol from behind, but he senses the attack and dodges it. Watching the two boys argue with each other, Errol realizes that their class doesn't help the boys with their teamwork, and he swoops in to finish them both off. The boys notice him coming, but suddenly, Errol vanishes from their sight before coming under one of them and knocking him clean out with a jaw punch. As his teammate falls, the other boy rushes to attack Errol, but he trips on his own friend, giving Errol the chance to knock him out as well. With both boys on the ground, Errol calmly announces that he won the fight, but they get angry and claim that he attacked them while their guard was down. As they ask Errol for a rematch, he easily agrees, but before it starts, a boy behind them warns the others not to try it, reminding them that they can't make cheap excuses like that if they fail on the battlefield. After the red-haired boy tells them they're a disgrace to all swordsmen, one of the two boys tries talking back to him, but his friend reminds him of red-haired boy's high status. The redhead then walks up to Errol and asks if he's the son of sword princess Farah. When Errol nods, the boy praises him for learning some solid swordsmanship from his mother. However, he reminds Errol that the two swordsmen he took down are just inexperienced children as he points his sword at him, challenging him to a real fight. The boy declares that he'll prove the real power of the swordman class, while the two other boys wonder if he's the village security captain Evan's son. The boy confirms his identity, and Errol remembers that his father used to contact his mother to hunt monsters. Errol thinks that the cute boy looks nothing like his father, and wonders if he'll also turn turn into a gruff-looking man. The boy's shoulders start trembling as he praises his father for being a powerful swordsman and wise mentor. He thinks it's unfair that, despite his father's great qualities, Errol's mother unfairly stole away his father's title of the village's strongest swordsman. At his jealous words, Errol realizes that the boy is just taking out his frustration on him because he hates his mother, and the redhead feels embarrassed to get called out, but asks Errol if he thinks the same. Errol confirms that his mother is the strongest person in their village, but the boy tells him that he inherited the best swordsman talent from his father, so he'll defeat Errol to prove that his family is superior. After calming down, the boy tells Errol that he already became a swordsman a year ago and has been training hard under his father ever since. With his dedicated practice, the boy thinks he has no chance of losing. However, Errol reminds him that he also received guidance from his powerful mother, so he's not going to lose against him. Both boys raise their swords to begin the fight, and the redhead attacks first. Errol parries his attack and strikes back, and they both engage in a fierce battle. Watching them exchange blows, the other two boys feel shocked that Errol is keeping up with the redhead despite being classless. Watching the boy swing his sword, Errol admits that he's much stronger than the other two, but his moves are driven by anger. Errol waits for him to slip up and attacks once he gets an opening. However, the boy unleashes a twin slice skill, which drives Errol back into a wall. The redhead feels surprised that his first slice was blocked, but notices that Errol got injured by the second. Finally losing his calm, Errol asks about the boy's ability, and he explains that it's a swordsman class skill that can't be blocked by someone classless. However, Errol feels determined that he can learn to block it with enough practice, and the redhead praises his resilience. A few days later, Errol's sister watches him snore late in the morning and tries to wake him up with a kiss. He gets up before she can touch him, coldly knocking her away with his head. Errol's sister gets offended and demands an apology kiss as he leaves his room to get breakfast. Their mother smiles and serves breakfast, and the family sits down to eat together. Errol's sister asks him if he's going to train again, and he nods. This angers her, and she tells him to take it easy and let her support him. However, Errol ignores her and gets up to leave, and his sister wonders why he's been going out to train daily ever since he returned home beaten into a pulp. Farah reassures her that Errol will be fine, explaining that they have a secret she doesn't know. She takes her daughter outside and opens a chest full of broken swords, revealing how hard Errol has been training the past few days. While his sister feels surprised, Errol's mother feels happy that her boy got inspired after dueling with other kids. Errol's determination also cheers up his sister, but she still wants to create a world where classless people like him aren't discriminated against, while her mother smiles at her noble goal. Meanwhile, in a forest, Errol whacks at a training target on a tree before backing up for an attack. He then unleashes a twin slice just like the redhead and feels satisfied with his power. While Errol thinks getting beaten up by the redhead was worth it, a goblin silently stalks him in some bushes. It jumps out to attack with its club, but Errol turns around and defeats it with a twin slice. While Errol feels happy with his skill's power, a large monster roars behind him. He turns around to report the monster's appearance to village security, but stops after hearing a panicked scream. Finding the scream familiar, Errol turns around, thinking that he doesn't have time to call security before that person gets hurt. He grabs his sword's handle and runs into the forest, mentally assuring himself that he'll be fine. Once he gets close to the source, Errol peeks from a bush and finds the redhead with a bloodied arm. Then, he notices a giant hobgoblin looming over the boy and wonders why it appeared. Errol then realizes that the redhead was also practicing like him and defeated some wild goblins, which attracted the leading hobgoblin. While the hobgoblin backs the boy into a corner, Errol gets behind it and prepares to launch his attack from the best angle. Errol takes a deep breath to prepare, and the redhead thinks that it's game over for him. The hobgoblin raises his club for the finishing blow, but suddenly, Errol cuts it down with a twin slice attack. After the monster falls to the ground, Errol thinks he has finally mastered the technique's footwork. The redhead tries to walk, but he stumbles into Errol's arms. Noticing that the boy lost his protection blessing, Errol asks if he has any holy water to heal his wounds. The boy silently looks at his smashed water bottle on the ground, so Errol offers him his own holy water. After he drinks the water, his wounds disappear, and the redhead feels annoyed by how strong Errol has gotten. Errol notices that his energy has returned, and the boy thanks him for his water before asking again about his powerful skill. Errol calmly reminds him that it's just a twin slice, but the boy asks how he learned it without a class. Knowing that ordinary people can't learn special skills, Errol explains that he pushed his training to the limits for this one. The redhead feels confused, so Errol explains that he learned the skill by adjusting to its timing and footwork. Then, Errol tells the redhead that he was the most important resource, since he helped him understand the skill after beating him up dozens of times with it. While the boy feels overwhelmed by this information, Errol tells him that he's been training the twin slice slice skill to defeat him in their rematch. Feeling impressed by Errol's dedication, the redhead accepts his rematch challenge. Errol asks him if he's sure, but the boy tells him it's the least he can do after he saved him and healed his wounds. Errol feels surprised that he knows how to repay favors, and the boy feels insulted by his low opinion of him. Soon, both boys get ready with their swords and begin their duel with a twin slice at the same time. While feeling shocked that Errol blocked both of the slices, the redhead gets hit by a surprise attack. He wonders what it was, and Errol tells him that he added a third slice. The redhead reminds Errol that it's called twin slice, but Errol explains that because he didn't get a predefined skill from a class, he can mold his technique into whatever he wants. He reveals to the boy that this was his first time successfully using the third strike, which leaves him even more frustrated. The redhead thinks that a swordsman's skill isn't supposed to lose to anyone, so Errol tells him he'll prove it in another match. Both boys raise their swords again, and the redhead calms down, thinking that he has a speed advantage over Errol. As both of them unleash their twin slices, the redhead watches for Errol's third slice. However, the third slice's speed still catches him off guard and knocks him down despite getting blocked. Errol points his sword at the defeated boy and tells him that this result was only to be expected. The redhead asks him why his third strike is so fast, so Errol explains that he learned the trick from him as well. Errol reveals that he controls his first two strikes to be slower and applies all his strength to the third strike to catch the opponent off guard. Feeling completely outclassed, the redhead gnashes his teeth in defeat, and Errol walks away victorious. A few days later, as Errol's family is having dinner, Farah reveals that Evan's son has left to train at Brescia. Surprised by this news, Errol asks what Brescia is, and his mother explains that it's the city of swords. She tells him that she used to train at a guild there before her marriage, and Errol feels excited to visit the city and explore his full potential as a classless hero. 5 years later, an older Errol heads out to Brescia city on a carriage. While passing a forest, the carriage driver informs everyone that they'll soon reach Brescia after climbing a hill. A woman riding the carriage asks her fellow passengers if they're all headed for the same place. A barbarian swordsman responds coldly to her, so she asks why he's so angry. The barbarian points at her trashy outfit, so the girl explains that less clothing is best for her dual swordsman class. Both swordsmen butt heads in anger, and the carriage driver glazes the offensive power of their advanced classes. He suddenly stops the carriage as a horde of wild orcs appears in front of them, and asks the two of them to prove their power. Losing their previous bravado, both swordsmen crap themselves in fear as the orc king stands up. A commoner lady grabs the boy's arm in fear, but he shoves her and runs for his life. As the woman also escapes, the carriage driver decides to flee as well. However, Errol quietly steps up and dashes into the orc horde. As Errol starts ripping the orcs apart, the carriage driver notices his blink dash skill. However, as the orcs surround Errol, the carriage driver thinks that Errol can't escape. Suddenly, Errol spins in a tornado and cuts down all the orcs. Much to everyone's shock, the driver instantly realizes that Errol's blade dance skill is the legendary Sword Princess's signature technique. He wonders how Errol can use this technique since Sword Princess is a female class. In front of the driver, Errol avoids the Orc King's heavy weapon and jumps over his head. He drives his sword straight into the beast's skull, and it lifelessly crumples to the ground. Afterward, Errol returns and asks the driver to take him to Brescia. When Errol says he wants to get stronger over there, the driver points out that he's already too overpowered. An excited passenger boy asks Errol about his class, and he stuns everyone by revealing he's completely classless. It turns out that 5 years ago, Errol showed his mother the twin slice skill he learned from the redhead. His mom thought she was dreaming, but Errol explained that he was learning skills even without a class. Then, Errol asked her to teach him the Sword Princess skills before he went to Brescia for more training. Errol's mom was starstruck by her son's talent and quickly started bragging about him to the rest of the family. Errol's dream ends abruptly as the carriage driver wakes him up in Brescia. Errol notices all the swordsmen around him, detecting many advanced swordsmen as well. He asks the carriage driver about his class, but he acts like he's just a normal guy. Errol points out that the carriage driver perfectly understood his swordsman skills, so he must be pretty strong himself. Feeling exposed, the driver explains that he's actually an advanced holy knight, so Errol asks him why he's doing carriage rides. The driver explains that whenever he gets tired of fighting, he takes breaks by taking normal rides. Errol nods, understanding that it's important to take breaks from training as well. Then, the driver advises him to join a sword guild to start out. He reveals that the city holds many swordsmanship tournaments where he can win some good money. As the driver points out that Errol can't participate without a guild membership, he nods and agrees to the plan. Errol feels excited to fight against stronger opponents, but the driver warns him to watch out for some bad guilds out there. Once the driver leaves, Errol turns around and heads heads into the city. He finds the Cavalry's guild recruiting knight swordsmen and a sword road guild open to everyone. Suddenly, a girl runs to hug Errol, but falls flat on her face as he avoids her. She wonders how he dodged her without even looking, thinking he's very powerful since he can detect her. While Errol feels confused, the girl asks him if he wants to join a guild. After he nods, the girl quickly begins a sales pitch for her new guild. She shows him the contract, but Errol leaves her without a word. The girl grabs his belt and asks why he's leaving, so Errol tells her she looks too desperate. He thinks that her guild must need new members because it's weak, and the girl tries acting like they're a famous top guild. Errol refuses to get scammed, so the girl introduces herself as Lilia and offers to go on a date with him if he joins. Errol tells her he's not interested, and the girl is left speechless. He thinks she's just like his older sister, acting like hot stuff with a cutting board flat chest. Then, he asks Lilia about the biggest guild in Brescia, and she gets angered by his disrespect. Sighing to calm down, Lilia tells him that Black Blade is the strongest guild with 8 ranked swordsmen. She tells Errol about their location, and he heads over to their large headquarters. A guard approaches him, asking what he wants. Errol tells him that he wants to join the guild, so the guard tells him to take a test. Errol follows him and lines up to wait for the test registration. Once it's Errol's turn, the receptionist explains that his guild only accepts advanced classes. When Errol tells him he's classless, the receptionist rudely laughs and tells him to leave. Behind him, the other swordsmen start whispering about him, and Errol asks the receptionist if he can take the test since he's confident in his abilities. However, the receptionist refuses, saying he can't change the rules. Suddenly, the room lights up as some ranked swordsmen enter the room, and Errol decides to try his luck elsewhere. He tries visiting other guilds, but all of them refuse him without a second thought. Afterward, Errol feels discouraged since he wasn't allowed to attempt a single test. Then, he remembers that his mother gave him a letter of recommendation to help him join her old guild. At the time, Errol thought she was just being overprotective, but he now realizes that she knew he'd get rejected. As Errol decides to join his mom's guild, Lilia appears again, but he ignores her and leaves. As he walks through the city, Lilia keeps begging him to join her and save her guild. Errol continues refusing her, so Lilia offers to lick his boots to convince him. However, he leaves her in front of the disgusted townsfolk, and Lilia vows never to give up. After Errol finally finds the guild's location, Lilia catches up to him again. She tells him that he's welcome to join them and points to the massive headquarters. Errol wonders why her guild is so weak despite being so big, and she reveals that they've lost their past glory. However, Lilia is confident that she can restore the Dragon Fang guild led by the Dual Swords King. At this name, Errol recalls that his mother was also in the same guild in her youth. He finally agrees to visit, so Lilia takes him inside and leads him to a seat. Suddenly, Lilia's drunk dad pops out from the sofa, and she gets angry at him. Lilia reminds him that the doctor prohibited him from drinking, and they don't have money for alcohol anyway. However, her dad doesn't care, and Errol realizes that he's the Dual Swords King. As Errol notices the man's missing arm, the man tells him to leave the guild since it's going to be finished soon. Lilia tries to stop her dad, but he ignores her and walks out. She tells Errol that her dad was one of the top swordsmen in Brescia, but his career ended after he lost his arm. She thinks that Errol definitely won't join their shabby guild now, but he actually decides to join. Lilia thinks she's dreaming, but Errol reveals that the other guilds will reject him anyway. She happily shows him the guild contract, and he sits down to sign it. Once done, he hands the contract to Lilia, who finally learns that Errol doesn't have a class. Lilia thinks that Errol is pranking her, so he shows her his class certificate. After taking a closer look, Lilia calmly gets up and draws a sword before threatening to give Errol the deceased class if he doesn't immediately leave the guild. He asks why Lilia wants him to leave, and she angrily points out that she needs actual swordsmen for her guild. Recalling how Errol humiliated her, Lilia gets frustrated that she got bullied by a classless piece of trash. Then, a woman named Rionur enters the room, and Lilia quickly jumps into her arms. Lilia tells her that a classless jerk tried to scam her, and Rionur instantly recognizes him. Errol feels confused that Rionur knows him, so she tells him that they're from the same hometown. She reminds him that they sparred in their childhood, but Errol still doesn't remember her. Then, Rionur tells him they met 5 years ago, but Errol says that he would never have forgotten a beauty like her. While Rionur's face turns into a tomato, Errol finally remembers fighting a red-headed boy, but Rionur reveals that she is actually Captain Evan's daughter and only child. Errol apologizes for not recognizing her, and Rionur thinks that she probably looks different because of her long hair. Thinking it's not the hair that changed, Errol looks at Rionur's chest, while Lilia asks her if he's the classless boy who defeated her. When Rionur nods, Lilia feels shocked that it's him. Rionur tells her that she won't lose this time because she's gotten much more powerful. Still upset by her previous loss, she challenges Errol to a rematch for old time's sake. The girls take him to the guild's training ground, and Lilia still feels surprised that Rhaenyra would fight a classless nobody. However, Rhaenyra admits that Errol is very powerful and feels determined to defeat him. Once both swordsmen get on the field, Lilia acts as the referee and starts the match. Rhaenyra begins with a twin slice, and Errol thinks he can easily stop it. However, the slices ignore Errol's attack and hit his body. He wonders how Rhaenyra got through, and she throws down her heavy sword. Rhaenyra explains that the sword is 5 times heavier than usual, so he can't counter her attack with the same technique. After she reveals that her brute swordsman class boosts her attack power, Errol feels shocked and blocks her attack. He praises Rhaenyra's incredible progress as she continues her onslaught. Errol steps back and admits that he'll lose if he continues facing her head-on. He wonders why Rhaenyra is exposing her secrets, but she says that it's worth it to defeat him. Then, Errol tells her that she can't hit him with her speed, and she charges forward to punish him. Rhaenyra deflects Errol's sword and strikes at his body, but it vanishes into an after-image. To Rhaenyra's shock, he appears behind her and strikes her neck. She wonders how he dodged her attack, but Errol reminds her that it was just a shadow. Knowing that the shadow skill is a supreme swordsman technique, Rhaenyra is stunned. She tries attacking Errol again, but he dodges everything, saying that the technique is as easy as just moving really fast. Rhaenyra feels insulted by Errol's simplified explanation, and he tells her that it took a lot of effort to master the technique. He vanishes and strikes her with another blow, but notices that his attacks aren't damaging her protection barrier. Rhaenyra grins smugly and reveals that power swordsmen have boosted defense. She tries attacking again, but Errol sidesteps her and hits back with a counterattack. As he reveals he learnt this counter from his mother, Rhaenyra collapses in defeat. Watching the battle, Lilia feels shocked, but announces Errol's victory. Rhaenyra feels frustrated that she lost despite getting stronger, and Errol praises her for her skills. However, he points out that he's just stronger than her, and Rhaenyra starts crying. Lilia quickly rushes to comfort her, angry that Errol made her cry. He feels confused why she's crying even though he praised her, and Rhaenyra acts like she didn't cry. Before running back to the guild, once she's inside, both he and Lilia hear her bawling about losing, even after all her training the last 5 years. Afterward, Lilia happily accepts Errol into their guild. He notices her changed attitude, but she acts like she believed in his strength the entire time. Errol remembers Lilia's aggressive attitude, but forgets it and asks her why the guild is dying. Lilia awkwardly tells him that they're in debt, and he asks how much. She calls him closer and whispers the number into his ear, but says that they can pay it all off if they win an upcoming tournament. Lilia explains that she needed 3 members to participate, and Errol asks why Rhaenyra is staying at their shabby place. Lilia reveals that when Rhaenyra first came to Brescia, she was rejected by all the big guilds. However, Lilia's father saw potential in Rhaenyra and kindly accepted her into Dragonfang. Errol nods, understanding that Rhaenyra is repaying their kindness with her loyalty. He tells Lilia that it'll be easy to pay off their debt with the tournament. However, she doesn't feel confident since they'll be facing up to 5-member enemy teams with just 3. While Lilia feels worried about the threatening enemies they're up against, Errol feels excited for the challenge. Looking forward to the tournament, Errol announces that fighting powerful opponents is the reason he came to Brescia, secretly watching them the entire time. The guild master leaves, having noticed Errol's great potential. The next day, Errol wakes up in a strange bedroom, but remembers that he's now living at the Dragonfang Guild. After heading out of the room, he greets Lilia and Rhaenyra at the table. Lilia asks him if he slept well, and Errol nods, saying that it's been a while since he rested in a proper bed. Noticing that Rhaenyra is completely silent, Errol wonders if she's still upset about her loss. Lilia interrupts his thoughts, saying that they're finally eligible for the guild tournament. Excited, she announces that Dragonfang is signed up and ready for battle. Curious, Errol asks her if the money from winning will be enough to cover their debt. Lilia nods and explains the competition rules, as she reveals that they need to eliminate all enemy guild members to win. Rhaenyra feels worried that they'll face tough competition with a disadvantage in numbers. However, Lilia feels optimistic since there's a low chance they'll encounter powerful or ranked swordsmen, as she feels happy they've got 2 B-ranked swordsmen of their own. Errol gets confused by the strange rankings. Rhaenyra scoffs at Errol for being so ignorant, and Lilia tells him that swordsmen's rankings start from D up to A based on their strength. She also reveals that there are only 20 ranked swordsmen in Brescia, and both Rhaenyra and she are B ranks. Even though Errol defeated Rhaenyra, Lilia doesn't suspect him of being a ranked because of the huge strength gap between the 2 ranks. Suddenly, she remembers that the battle pairings for the competition are about to be announced, and leaves to check them. After Lilia leaves, Rhaenyra also gets up. up, and Errol asks where she's going. When she says that she's about to train, Errol asks Rhaenyra to confirm that she's a power bladesman. He asks if she has other skills aside from her main class, so she tells him about the Guts ability, which enhances her protection barrier. Wanting to learn the ability, Errol gets up and takes Rhaenyra's hands, as she thinks Errol is being romantic. He suddenly asks her to beat him up with her sheathed sword. Errol tells her that they can grow closer together this way, but Rhaenyra tells him she's not freaky enough for such a relationship. Errol explains that he's just trying to learn her Guts ability. He thinks that since the ability enhances a person's capacity to endure attacks, the best way to learn it is to get repeatedly beaten up himself. Rhaenyra reminds Errol that he can't just learn her skills because they're a blessing from the goddess. However, he reminds her that he also learned the twin slice and shadow skills, and Rhaenyra grows silent. She takes him to the training ground, where Errol asks for her heavy sword, thinking he doesn't have the strength to wield it. Rhaenyra gets shocked as he effortlessly pulls out the sword. Errol tells her that this is the result of countless hours of dedication, and he feels confident he can learn the Guts ability with them. Rhaenyra finally recognizes Errol's hard work and decides to teach him the ability. As she reminds Errol she won't go easy on him, he feels glad that he got such a powerful woman from his hometown. Flustered by his comment again, Rhaenyra raises her sword and begins their training. As they train, Lilia comes rushing down, panicking about their first opponent. She starts crying that their first match is against Black Blade, who are literally the strongest guild in the entire city. Knowing that their leader, who is called George, is a complete scumbag, Lilia thinks that he'll try to crush them without mercy. However, she still decides to fight back against her destiny and prepare their best for the tournament. When Lilia finally notices Rhaenyra beating up Errol, she thinks that they're fighting because of bad teamwork. Rhaenyra explains that it's just some special training, but Lilia keeps thinking that she's taking her frustration out on him. Exhausted, Errol gets up, complaining about his hunger, but Lilia tells him to take some holy water first. As the days go on, it's finally time for the tournament. Errol feels impressed by the huge coliseum and the large crowd, and he listens to some spectators whispering about their match. They feel excited to see two large guilds fight, but decide to bet on Black Blade since the shoddy Dragon Fang can't win. Lilia gets ready to give them a piece of her mind, but Rhaenyra stops her before she can make a scene. Errol is surprised that they've got betting pools at the tournament, and Lilia gets a malicious smirk as she realizes that their betting odds are 20-1. Errol gets impressed by the number, and she angrily reminds him that nobody thinks they'll win. However, Lilia thinks that the betting is a great opportunity to scam people for money if they can somehow win against Black Blade, knowing that they won't get out of debt if they lose the match anyway. Lilia reveals that she mortgaged her house and bet all their life savings on their own guild. Rhaenyra thinks that there's a higher chance they'll lose, but Lilia thinks they're already at rock bottom anyway. Suddenly, George praises Lilia for guarding her dad's guild so passionately. He asks her about the classless hero she recruited, and Lilia thinks he's trying to mock her. Lying through his teeth, George claims that he's simply sad to see the decline of his rival guild. He mocks Lilia, saying that he specifically arranged their match because everyone would be excited to see the old strongest guild versus the new strongest. George also tells her that he gave her a great chance to make money from the betting, but laughs since he knows there's no way she can beat his ranked swordsman anyway. As Lilia tells him they'll definitely win, George leaves her fuming. Errol notes how sly George is, noting his mockery through sweet words. Afterward, once it's time for the match to begin, the announcer starts setting the mood. As the crowd erupts into cheers, Errol notes that George won't be fighting them. He thinks that the leader might actually be merciful, but Lilia reminds him that all of his members are ranked anyway. Rhaenyra also thinks they're not going easy on them, so Errol gets excited to see the skills of stronger swordsmen. Soon, the announcer calls for the first match between Black Blade's Geo against Dragon Fang's classless Errol. As he walks into the arena, the crowd starts whispering about him. The crowd wonders why Dragon Fang sent a classless weakling to get humiliated, and Geo thinks the match is just a waste of his time. The announcer starts the match, and Geo instantly teleports in front of Errol and stabs him with his pole. Lilia gets worried for Errol, but Rhaenyra reminds him it's just a shadow. Seeing the shadow disappear, Geo's cocky grin falters, but he turns around and stabs the body behind him. However, he finds out that it's another shadow, and notices two Errols standing in the arena. Geo thinks that he can just take both of them out with a blink dash skill, but he is surprised to see a third one behind him. As the three shadows charge at him, Geo takes them all out, but the real Errol easily appears under him and defeats him with one blow. Geo crumples to the ground, wondering how Errol can create three shadows, but Errol tells him that his mother can create 5 of them without even trying. With Geo down, the announcer declares the victor, and the crowd roars with applause. Lilia also cheers for Errol, while Rhaenyra is shocked that Errol can take down an ranker so easily. As the medics carry Geo away, Errol thinks that he still needs more practice practice before he can copy Gio's critical strike. Meanwhile, the crowd feels shocked that he can outperform a swordsman while being classless. As George silently watches, the next match begins. The Black Blade's next swordsman slashes at Errol, but he easily blocks his opponent's attacks. Then, Errol easily cuts him down with a twin slice skill and wins the match. In the next match, Errol's opponent tries to use a dagger with close combat, but he appears behind him like a ghost and knocks him down. Even Errol's teammates feel surprised he won 3 straight matches, and Ryuner asks Lilia why she isn't fighting. Lilia knows that there's no way she can win, so she decides to keep cheering for their star. She gets Ryuner to cheer with her, and they watch Errol fight a shield bearer. Errol easily avoids the opponent's attacks, who thinks that he's lying about being classless. Errol praises his opponent, saying that he needs to gradually wear him down since he can't break through the shields. However, the man reminds him that a classless hero shouldn't even be able to do that. Errol tells him that he put in the hard work to get where he is, but the shield bearer thinks that classes can't be overcome with just hard work. He pretends to attack Errol with his sword, but uses it as a feint to charge with his shield. However, Errol predicts it and counterattacks with his foresight skill. The counterattack knocks the shield away, and the man is shocked, thinking he learnt it from his previous opponent. Errol thinks there's still a long way to go before he can master the counter, but he can use it in battle after seeing it. He uses the counter kick on his opponent again, who remains shocked that he can learn so quickly. Then, Errol walks over to the shield and picks it up, angering his opponent. He charges at Errol to punish him, but he easily sidesteps it and takes him out with his own shield counter. After the announcer declares Errol's 4th win, the crowd starts doubting if he's truly classless, and the tournament organizers demand to see Errol's class card to confirm. Errol agrees to submit it, so the announcer takes his class card, places it into the crystal ball, and everyone quiets down once she verifies he's legit. George starts feeling the pressure of loss, while even Ryuner starts hoping that they can win their match. Lilia feels upset that she didn't know about Errol's full strength earlier. Otherwise, she would have sold off her family heirlooms to bet even more money on themselves. Ryuner says that she didn't expect him to grow this much, and wonders how Errol trained the last 5 years. Meanwhile, Lilia gets ready to marry him, thinking that no matter what happens to the guild, she can always rebuild it if she has him by her side. As Lilia continues her dark plans, Errol feels unsettled by her malicious aura. Finally, the announcer introduces Black Blade's final swordsman, called Master Masamune. Errol notices that Masamune uses a katana, and Ryuner realizes that he's a rare samurai-class swordsman. Knowing that Masamune has never fought in public before, Lilia thinks that he's the Black Blade's ace for this tournament. As the match begins, Masamune calmly reaches for his sword, and Errol feels pressured by his calmness. Noticing Errol's hesitation, Masamune smiles and confirms that he's waiting for him to get close so he can use his ultimate technique. After hearing his provocation, Errol starts walking towards Masamune, who feels surprised. He explains that they can't just stay standing like trees for the entire match, and he also wants to see Masamune's strongest moves. Masamune chuckles, saying that Errol won't have time to react or watch if he unleashes his ultimate technique. However, Errol remains confident in his own speed and continues walking. He notices that Masamune's sword is still in its scabbard and wonders if he'll unleash the final attack in just one strike. Errol thinks about using shadows, but decides against it since Masamune is too focused to be fooled by them. He stops right in front of his opponent, knowing that one strike will decide their match. Both boys hold their breaths, and as Errol takes his final step, Masamune instantly strikes with a lightning-fast attack. However, Errol disappears right in front of him, and Masamune feels shocked since he moved so fast with his real body. Behind him, Errol praises Masamune for his speed, but tells him that the person who trained him is much faster. He unleashes a piercing tempest, which overwhelms Masamune and knocks him to the ground. Ryuner and Lilia are stunned as they recognize the Sword Princess's finishing technique, while the crowd feels disbelief that he won. The announcer seals the deal, and everyone starts screaming at the Black Blade for wasting all their money on the bets. Both of Errol's teammates celebrate their victory, and Lilia tries to hug Errol when he returns. He avoids her and lets her fall, explaining that it was just a reflex reaction to protect against his older sister. Then, Lilia cheers up, thinking about all the money, and Errol notices Ryuner with her arms open. She realizes her embarrassing pose and gets flustered, but Errol tells her that he'd like to hug her without the armor. Lilia offers to fulfill his desires, but he lets her fall again, while George gnashes his teeth, preparing to avenge this humiliating defeat. Afterward, Dragon Fang heads back home to celebrate their victory. Watching Lilia drink real alcohol, Errol is surprised that she's already an adult. Knowing he doesn't drink, Ryuner offers him some juice, while Lilia suddenly asks Errol to marry her. He refuses her without hesitation, saying that he'd rather marry Ryuner instead. Lilia is stunned and Ryuner gets embarrassed, thinking he's just joking. He asks her why she doesn't believe he'd like her, so she She explains that everyone sees her as a tomboy meathead. Recalling her childhood, Errol agrees, but thinks that she has grown up into an attractive lady. However, Rhaenyra tells him that she's too focused on swordsmanship to care about romance. Seeing her reject Errol's advances, Lilia takes the chance to flirt with him. To her shock, he decides to practice it with Rhaenyra instead of her. Once their celebration is over, Errol goes back to training the guts ability with Rhaenyra. After a good dose of beating, Rhaenyra tells him that it won't work. Refusing to quit, Errol tells her that he needs to keep being beaten half to death in order to develop the guts ability. He says that Rhaenyra is the perfect partner for the job, but she doubts whether she can help him pull it off. Watching Errol's reckless training, Lilia complains about his careless methods. Suddenly, her dad appears, thinking that Errol is just venting his anger after losing his tournament match. When Lilia tells him that they actually won against the strongest guild, Rod thinks they must have sent some weak teammates as a joke. In response, she explains that Errol actually defeated 5 ranked swordsmen in a row. Her dad is silenced, and Lilia thinks that they can now pay off their debt with the money. However, her pessimistic dad thinks that Errol will just be stolen by a better guild with more resources, so Dragon Fang will remain dead. His negative attitude annoys even Errol, who tells him that he's just a spineless failure who quit despite having an arm he can wield a sword with. Errol's insult hits Lilia's dad's weak point, and he grabs his shirt in rage, screaming that he literally can't use half his skills now as a dual wielder. After Errol points out that he's a classless guy himself, so skills don't matter to him. Lilia's dad finally calms down and leaves after releasing him. After he leaves, Errol sighs, thinking Rod has huge potential even without half his skills. Lilia thanks him for giving her dad some motivation, and both Rhaenyra and Errol think that Rod can return to the ring with some more encouragement. Seeing them eager to see powerful skills, Lilia suggests that they should go to a dungeon. Errol doesn't know anything about dungeons, so Rhaenyra explains that there's a huge monster dungeon right below the city of Brescia. The idea of fighting monsters gets Errol excited, and Rhaenyra also decides to go with him. She thinks that it'll be some good training for the upcoming Sword King Cup. Once again, Errol is clueless about the event, so Rhaenyra tells him that it's the biggest and most prestigious swordsman event in the city. To help him register, Lilia gives him a form, but Errol instantly tears it apart. Rhaenyra is confused why he doesn't want to fight in the event, so he explains that Lilia actually sneaked in a marriage form. After getting exposed, Lilia tries to act like it was just a prank, so Errol punishes her in a chokehold. Meanwhile, a strange woman watches the scene from a crystal ball, as George asks her about the situation. When the woman informs George about their plans for the dungeon, he starts grinning deviously, planning to take revenge under the dark dungeon's cover. The next morning, Lilia tries to kiss Errol in his bed. Sensing her disturbing presence, he quickly clamps her face to protect his innocence. As Lilia feels offended by his cold attitude, Errol calls her out for being a creep. Lilia starts questioning his manhood, but Errol just ties her to the bed and leaves her screaming in the room. He knocks on Rhaenyra's door, and she asks him if he needs anything. After getting her permission, Errol enters her room, but finds her peacefully talking in her sleep. In her dreams, Rhaenyra proudly tells her daddy that she has become a power swordsman just like him. Watching her happy expression, Errol realizes that she's a daddy's girl. While in the other room, Rod walks in on his daughter tied up like a misbehaving dog. Afterward, they all head out for the dungeon, and Errol is surprised that it's located within the city instead of a wild cave. Noting the huge crowd gathered at the entrance, Rhaenyra thinks that they're all going to train for the Sword King tournament. Once they arrive, Lilia explains that the teleportation portal at the entrance can teleport people to dungeon floors they've already explored before. Errol wonders if he can head to level 14 with Rhaenyra, but finds out that the teleport only works for the floors he has cleared himself. He feels upset that he has to start with the weakest floors, so Lilia offers to take him through the shortest route with her. Rhaenyra asks to go with them, but Lilia tries to drag Errol away so she can harass him in private. However, Errol also asks Rhaenyra to come with them, much to Lilia's frustration. Once they're in the dungeon, the group encounters some living armors. Errol parries a hit from the first armor, but it quickly circles around him for a sneak attack. Surprised by the heavy armor's speed, he dodges the attack and slashes its helmet off. However, the armor's headless body turns around to attack, and Errol realizes that he needs to attack its legs to stop it. Lilia claps as he takes out the armor, but reels in shock when the haunted armor moves its hand. Then, Errol looks at Rhaenyra, who has taken out her opponent. She tells him that the armor could regenerate if they don't go to the next floor in time, and Errol thinks that a regenerating magic armor is perfect for sword training. Meanwhile, Lilia acts like she's exhausted from the fight, but Errol reminds her that she just stood there like a statue. She pretends like she just wanted to let him and Rhaenyra have some fun, and Errol asks about her class. Lilia proudly tells him that she's a fencer, and Errol recalls that a fencer can advance into the Sword Princess class. Already knowing the Sword Princess princess skills from his mom, Errol gets bored with Lilia and heads into level 2. However, they encounter an injured boy, who reveals that his team stumbled on a surprise trap. Rioner tells the boy to get treatment in the city, but he doesn't want to leave without saving his friends. Seeing his hesitation, she offers to save his friends in his place, but Lilia stops her. She thinks that they should scam the injured man out of some money for their help, and Errol calls her a complete fraud. However, Lilia refuses to help a broke man for free, so the injured guy tries to flatter her. His fake compliments fail to work. So finally, the boy gives Lilia a bag of coins. Finally getting what she wanted, she happily accepts the money. Errol asks her if the situation seems fine to her, but Lilia tells him the money looks real. He tells her that the money isn't what's wrong, but follows the injured boy down the hallway anyway. While walking with him, Errol notices that despite the excessive bleeding, the boy is walking without a problem. He realizes that the boy isn't hurt at all and is just trying to scam them. But Errol feels excited to face whatever troubles he's going to cause. Once the boy takes them to the hidden room, he is shocked to see his friends missing. Seeing his bloody footprints in the room, Lilia tries following the trail to pick up a coin, but she activates a teleportation trap in the floor. The scammer swordsman grins, saying he was just doing his job, but the trap also teleports him with everyone else. Once they arrive in the new room, Rioner notes that it's deeper than any floor she has ever been to. Meanwhile, the scammer starts panicking that he's stuck with them, and Lilia gets up to question him. Her foot kicks the gold coin on the floor, which triggers another trap that summons a strange enemy. As the enemy brandishes its sword, the boy explains that the trap has led them to the dungeon's deepest level, which has the ultimate class Sword Emperor as its final boss. As the Sword Emperor slashes at them, everyone ducks their heads. Lilia gets shocked that the slash tore into the dungeon walls from such a long distance, and Errol remains cautious against his terrifying opponent. It suddenly teleports in front of him, and Errol parries its attack. However, the sword god still drives him into a wall through the parry, while Errol feels happy that he learned the guts skill, believing that the skill gives him a fighting chance against a strongest opponent. Errol prepares to test his full strength, watching him act so calm in front of the Emperor. The girls are shell-shocked. Suddenly, Errol also teleports in front of the monster, and pushes it back with an attack. In response, the monster unleashes a gravity field that holds down the others, while Errol remains standing under its pressure. Remembering the training from his mom, he recalls how brutal her gravity field was. Thankfully, she taught him how to break through the gravity field, but not without giving him a full taste of the technique on his own body. Errol decides to show off by picking up the gold coin and slashing it in front of the Emperor. Before jumping up for the final blow, he uses the Infinite Break special skill, which destroys the armor and stuns everyone. After the battle, Errol takes a quick sip of holy water, and Rioner asks him how he knew the Sword Emperor's techniques. Errol explains that his mom is actually a Sword Emperor herself, but she pretends to be a sword princess to avoid unnecessary attention. Rioner thinks that she would have never challenged him with his mom's terrifying background, but Errol feels glad that he got to fight her since she led to his training and growth. Once they're done with their discussion, a portal opens up to exit the dungeon. As the group starts leaving, the scammer boy is surprised that they didn't beat him up for revenge. Lilia tells him that since Errol is happy, she'll spare his life this time. Back in the city, Rod is thinking about Errol's words at a tavern. Nearby, a group of scammers gloats about the easy mission in the dungeon, laughing at their stupid friend for getting teleported away, as one of them says that Dragon Fang will be finished after this loss. Rod asks the group what happened. The leader of the group treats Rod like a drunk old geezer, so he calmly smashes their table apart and asks again. Luckily for the runts, George stops Rod before he can tear them a new one. Rod suspects him of arranging the trap, but George acts all innocent. He tells Rod that Lilia's group stumbled upon a hidden trap, which teleported them into a dangerous area. Furious, Rod charges at George, cursing him for taking his arm and daughter away. However, just then, he hears Lilia's cheerful voice from the entrance as she comes over to party with her friends, relieved to see her safe. Rod quickly hugs her, while George is speechless that the kids survived. Errol tells him that he defeated the Sword Emperor, and Lilia explains that the boy George hired ended up exposing him for organizing this trap. George thinks that it's the kids' fault for being careless in the dungeon, and Errol agrees with his idea. As he begins to leave, Rod tells him that he'll avenge this, but George mocks him for being a useless drunkard. However, once he gets back to his room, he starts throwing a hissy fit like a salty kid, thinking back to the Dual Swords King and Sword Princess. George feels frustrated because they always outshone him. With a monster like Errol in Dragon Fang's ranks, George thinks he'll never have the chance to be the strongest in his life. Seeing his strong resentment, an evil sword calls out to him, offering to help him take revenge for a price. A few days later, in the Dragon Fang Guild, Lilia sighs in frustration. Rioner wonders what's wrong, so Lilia explains that the preliminary matchups are out for the Sword King tournament, and she got matched up in the same bracket as Errol. Knowing that Errol would obliterate her, Lilia thinks there's no way she can qualify now. Soon, Errol also comes into the room, and Rhaenyra explains that only the winner of every bracket can advance into the semifinals. Seeing Lilia so depressed, he comforts her by saying that she wouldn't be able to get into the finals anyway. Looking at her own matchup, Rhaenyra feels relieved that she isn't in the same group as Errol. He nods, thinking it's a great chance for her to get into the finals and impress her daddy. Happy to show off, Rhaenyra starts grinning, but gets embarrassed that she called her father daddy instead of dad. Meanwhile, Lilia decides not to give up yet and tells everyone to train with her at the dungeon. Errol asks her why he has to go, so she tells him that he'll handle any dangerous situations. Before she can go, her father comes in and warns her to be careful, since George could try to pull another stunt. After telling her to come back if anything goes wrong, he feels embarrassed acting like a father now, but says that he has stopped being a drunkard and is returning as a swordsman. Once it's time for the Sword King Cup, the preliminary matches begin. After her match, Lilia sighs, having lost already. Errol tells her that she wouldn't have been able to qualify even if he weren't there. She admits that she sucks, and Errol thinks it's a shame he couldn't fight her. Hearing this, Lilia thinks there's no way he actually wanted to fight her, and she tells him to be careful in his final round. Errol wonders why he needs to be so careful since he has already seen the strongest swordsman skills in the dungeon. However, Lilia reveals that his opponent possesses many unique skills. She has the magic swordsman class and can enchant her sword with magic while fighting. This confuses Errol, who points out that the tournament is for swordsmen. She explains that anyone can participate in the tournament as long as they belong to a swords guild, just like Errol, who is classless. Errol finally understands and leaves to fight his opponent. Once he gets into the ring, the woman tells Errol not to cry about her magic swordsman class if he ends up losing the match. After he tells her there won't be a problem, both of them get ready to fight. The announcer starts the match, and she immediately starts lobbing fireballs at Errol. He dodges and blocks each of the fireballs before running to get close to his opponent. Once Errol gets close, she blocks his attacks with her own sword and forces him back with a fireball. He notes that the long and short range attacks granted by the magic class are very convenient, but the girl lacks the advanced skills of either magic users or swordsmen since it's difficult to master two classes at once. After getting exposed, the girl feels offended and uses her magic to enhance her sword. Seeing her flaming sword, Errol is surprised, and the girl declares she's using the most powerful skill for magic swordsmen. She slashes at him with a fire blade, which creates a wall of flames in his direction. As Errol avoids the attacks, the girl laughs, thinking she's got the upper hand. While continuing to dodge attacks, Errol admits that the fiery sword can be a very powerful attack if it is mastered properly. The girl agrees with him, but he tells her that she's still pretty trash at using her powers. Errol keeps blocking her attacks while standing completely still, saying that she's not even a better swordsman than the pathetic Lilia. Then, Errol unleashes a twin slice attack, which blows a harsh wind that puts out the girl's flame. After leaving her unarmed, he uses the blink dash skill to teleport right behind her and knock her out, having casually dispatched his opponent. Errol thanks her for showing him a new skill, while the announcer declares his victory. Before leaving the arena, Errol wonders if a classless guy like him can also use magic. A few days later, in Dragonfang, Lilia tells her father to cheer on Errol in the finals. He keeps refusing to go, so she wonders if he's scared of seeing George at the arena. Embarrassed, Rod says that's not true, and explains that after he tried using a sword again, he realized how rusty he's gotten. He doesn't feel comfortable attending the tournament when he thinks he can't even win the finals, but Lilia gets offended since someone like her wouldn't even dream of qualifying. Then, as she keeps forcing him to go, Rod finally gets up. As they walk to the arena, Lilia thinks that Rod would have snuck in to watch the tournament later. Anyway, he wonders why she thinks that, so she reminds him of all the times he encouraged Rhaenyra during her training. Since Rod loves seeing his guild members grow stronger, there's no way he would miss it when Rhaenyra is in the finals. Seeing how smart his daughter has become, Rod smiles, saying that she's just like her mother. Meanwhile, at the arena, Rhaenyra's legs tremble from anxiety. Suddenly, Errol pops out of nowhere and tells her to relax, which embarrasses her even more. He wonders why she's so nervous. So Rhaenyra explains that this is the biggest tournament of the city, and she won't even know who she's facing before getting into the ring. Errol thinks that she's nervous about fighting him, but Rhaenyra quickly denies it. Soon, the announcer shouts that the first match is about to begin between the current champion, George, and Errol. Hearing his own name, Errol starts to leave, but Rhaenyra grabs his hand. Despite feeling flustered, she tells him to be careful, and Errol smiles before leaving. When he steps into the arena, he hears Lilia cheering for him in the audience. As she tells him to destroy the scumbag George, Errol gets shocked as George walks out, transformed into a demonic creature. Feeling George's demonic aura, Lilia wonders what happened to him, and Rod notices a strange sword in his hands. He quickly warns Errol to get away from him, saying that he's using the most powerful sword. Confused, Lilia asks what's special about the sword, so Rod reveals that the sword is sealing a powerful demon. Surprised that someone knows about his origins, the demon George wonders if Rod is from the royal palace. Since George doesn't remember him, Rod thinks that the demon has completely taken over his mind. He recalls that after the original sword god killed so many demons with his sword, it absorbed their resentment and transformed into an evil weapon. However, the sword was sealed in the royal treasury, and the demon laughs that someone foolish has unsealed it. Since the previous royal family died centuries ago, the demon thinks he's free to wreak havoc as he pleases. Happy that he finally got freedom after centuries of waiting patiently, the demon announces that his name is Duagelda. Rhaenyra feels surprised by his name, and Errol asks who this guy is. She gets annoyed that he never paid attention in history class, and explains that Duagelda is a demon who summoned evil power from the higher realm. As the rest of the audience realizes they're dealing with Duagelda, they all get terrified since the demon was capable of destroying entire cities in the legend. Scared of their lives, all of the audience flees the arena, while Duagelda feels proud that he's causing so much fear. However, he doesn't feel satisfied yet, and creates a dark formation which releases a dense evil aura. The aura flares up and turns the sky dark, and creates a barrier around the arena gates that prevents anyone from escaping. Rod wonders if the demon is planning to end them all, while Duagelda gets ready to enjoy a lovely massacre. However, Errol gets ready to fight him. Surprising the demon with his courage, Errol confidently tells him that he can defeat him, since the demon was defeated by a sword god in the past. Duagelda laughs, thinking that there are no more sword gods in this world anyway. However, Errol tells Duagelda that his mom is a sword god herself, but he can defeat the pitiful demon on his own anyway. Duagelda thinks that Errol is just deluded, but gets shocked when he attacks with blinding speed. Realizing that Errol just used a sword god skill, the demon gets scared of him. While Errol starts running circles around the demon, he suddenly smiles, reminding him that he's also in the body of a very powerful swordsman. Duagelda jumps up, shocking Errol with his speed, and knocks him down with a powerful strike. The demon thinks he has won, but when the smoke clears, he is shocked to see Errol completely unharmed. Errol explains that he survived the attack because of his gut skill, and Duagelda tries attacking again. Errol blocks the attack and uses the Infinity Break skill. The skill creates multiple clones of Errol who gang up on Duagelda together, forcing him back with a billion slashes. After being humbled, Duagelda admits that Errol is a true sword god, but Errol reveals that he's actually classless and sends the demon away. After Duagelda lands on the ground, unconscious, Errol tries approaching him to see if he was defeated. He feels confident that the demon can't hurt him with such heavy injuries, while the audience is shocked that someone as strong as Errol still exists in their world. As Errol leaves Duagelda on the ground, the demon decides to escape him to avoid getting sealed again, knowing he can only escape by possessing someone else. He searches through the audience and decides to control Rod, since he's the most powerful after Errol. Nearby, as Lilia is celebrating Errol's win, Rhaenyra wonders if the tournament will still continue. Suddenly, the sword in George's hands frees itself before launching towards Rhaenyra. Errol quickly protects her, but the sword shoots towards Lilia instead. Rod rushes to save his daughter, but when the smoke clears, he points a sword at her throat, possessed by Duagelda. Duagelda commands Lilia to stand up, and Errol realizes that the evil sword is actually the demon's true body. Duagelda laughs, saying it's too late to figure it out now, but Errol thinks he can just defeat it again. However, the demon warns him that he'll kill his wife if he attacks, which leaves Errol confused. He tells Duagelda that there's no way he'd marry a talentless airhead like Lilia, but the demon thinks Errol is lying since Rod's memories show that Lilia is engaged to him. Instead of fearing for her life, Lilia becomes terrified that Errol will destroy her for lying. Realizing that she lied to her father about being engaged, Errol decides to finish her off along with Duagelda. The demon asks if he's really okay with hurting his friend, but Errol replies that he shouldn't have taken someone worthless as a hostage. The awkward exchange leaves the demon speechless, and Lilia finally confesses that she made up the whole engagement story. While Rhaenyra feels bad for Lilia, Errol tells her there's no way Duagelda can hurt her anyway. The demon accepts his challenge and tries to hurt Lilia, but finds himself unable to move Rod's hand. Fighting to get control of his mind, Rod puts the sword down, while Lilia runs to Rhaenyra. Errol points out that even after getting possessed, Rod's body never transformed into a demon, so Duagelda couldn't properly control him. Duagelda asks Rod why he doesn't want his demonic powers, so he explains that in the past, he might have accepted his offer. However, because Errol showed him the results of training, Rod thinks that he can regain his past glory without anyone's help. He throws the demon sword over to Errol, who slices it into countless pieces. With Duagelda completely defeated, the darkness surrounding the arena finally disappears, and Errol realizes that he just slayed an ancient demon. After the Dragon Fang's victory at the tournament, dozens of new swordsmen join the guild. Motivated to start swordsmanship again, Rod trains these young fellows in the guild's training ground. However, he's too strong and humbles them all in an instant. As the trainees run away, Lilia asks one of them why he's escaping. The boy points out that her dad is way too strict as a teacher. She nods in agreement. Lilia smiles, happy that their rotting old guild has finally gotten a new life after Errol led them to victory. At the mention of Errol, the trainee asks her where he went. With an awkward face, she tells him that Errol has already left the guild. Thinking about Errol, she starts crying and recalls that Rionur also left to follow him on his journey. Meanwhile, Errol is riding the same carriage back home that he used to arrive in Brescia. The carriage driver asks him why he's already leaving without enjoying his fame as champion. In response, Errol says there was nothing left to learn in the city since he had already mastered everything. The driver agrees, but remembers that they're heading to the even more boring countryside. As he asks Errol if he's planning to return home, he nods. However, Errol also wants to test his sword skills back home, thinking he can finally beat his mom. The driver laughs, seeing how much he fears his own mom. Back at home, Farah is picking some roses to welcome her son when she realizes he's standing behind her. Errol says that he was hiding his presence, and Farah admits that she only detected him when he got close. When he reveals that he won the Sword God Cup, his mom smiles in praise. Suddenly, she teleports right in front of his face before he can even react. Stunned, Errol realizes that he would have been turned into a shish kebab if his mom were holding a sword instead. Knowing that her son wants to challenge her, Farah tells him to come to the training ground. Once they're in the training ground, both swordsmen raise their swords for the duel, and Farah tells Errol that she's excited to see how strong he has become. Errol tells her to laugh while she can because he's going to defeat her today. In response, she rushes him at lightning speed, but he manages to block her first few strikes. While parrying her attack, Errol notes that it would have defeated him if she hadn't used the same move in the garden earlier. After jumping back from the parry, he unleashes some rapid strikes, but his mom blocks them all. Farah praises Errol for combining the Divine Air Slice and Twice Slice skills, but he asks her which skill she used to block his attack. She reveals that she just swung her sword the old-fashioned way, which leaves him speechless. Farah tells him that he inspired her to fight without skill, and Errol smiles before attacking again. As they clash hard, the entire village hears their swords clanging. As they think it's a scary monster, Errol jumps into the sky, using even stronger skills to challenge his mom. She uses a binding spell to bring him down, but Errol blocks it. Seeing that he's strong enough to hold his own, Farah decides to unleash her full power. Finally, both of them use the Infinity Break skill, clashing head-on with their strongest move. A little while later, Rionur walks to Errol's house after searching the entire village for him. When she knocks on the door, his little sister, called Mira, comes out. Rionur asks to see Errol, but Mira is too jealous to let a girl see her brother. After telling Rionur that she won't let a cow meet her brother, Mira tries to close the door. As Rionur stops her to negotiate, Farah and Errol return from their duel. Mira happily jumps into her brother's arms, and Rionur notices how similar they look. Mira notices that Errol and Farah are beat up, so he explains they were just dueling. Curious, Mira asks who won, and learns that Errol did in the end. However, Errol thinks he only outlasted his mother because her strength isn't at its prime. As he feels disappointed by the win, Farah jokes that she's still young. Then, she wonders why a pretty young lady is looking for her son and invites Rionur for some tea. Once they're inside, Farah gets straight to the point. She asks Rionur how she fell in love with her son, which makes Rionur completely flustered. While Mira feels jealous, Errol explains that he lived in Brescia with Rionur. This information gives Farah all sorts of unsavory ideas, so Rionur gets embarrassed and explains that they were just guildmates. Then, Errol asks Rionur why she came to his house, so she tells him it was rude to leave the guild so suddenly. He points out that he filled out the official resignation form, but Rionur still thinks he should have said goodbye before leaving. However, Errol doesn't care about relationships since he's only focused on swordsmanship, which leaves her speechless. Meanwhile, Farah feels happy that a girl would travel to their village just for her son. Rionur tells Farah that she also lives in this village, but that isn't the only reason she came. She wants Farah to take her as a disciple. Before they can discuss anything else, Captain Evans rushes to their door. He barges in and explains that something bad has happened in the nearby forest. Many trees have been cut down and the ground is badly damaged. Farah feels guilty because she caused the mess with Errol during their duel. However, Farah calmly tells Evans she just defeated a monster, so he finally calms down. As he thinks about returning and telling the villagers they're safe, he suddenly notices his own daughter. Farah is surprised that Rionur is actually Evans' daughter, while he wonders what she's doing at her house. Farah quickly tells Evans that her daughter wants to train under her to become a good wife. Overwhelmed that his daughter has grown up, Evans starts crying, while Rionur tells Farah she just wanted to train. Farah is confused since she thought the training was for housework, so though Rhaenyra tells her she actually meant to learn swordsmanship. Still, Farah carries her momentum and offers to teach her both housework and swordsmanship, and Evans agrees. Rhaenyra is stunned as her father reveals he always wanted his daughter to become a fine lady after his wife passed away. Seeing him push her into marriage, Rhaenyra feels bad that they're ignoring her own dreams. After Evans leaves, Errol visits his father in his office. He asks what kind of magic Leo is researching, and Leo explains that it's a powerful finishing move. Then, Leo puts away his magic and asks Errol why Mira was shouting outside, as he thinks his son finally pulled a baddie. Errol nods. However, Errol tells him he's not here to discuss romance. He tells Leo that he just defeated his mom in a sword fight, and Leo congratulates him. Then, Leo gets serious since he knows what Errol will ask. As expected, Errol asks his dad if he can teach him magic next, but his father refuses, saying it's impossible. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Farah begins training Rhaenyra to be a housewife. With a big cabbage in front of her, Rhaenyra holds a knife like she's about to fight the strongest enemy of her life. Watching her wield the knife like a sword, Farah realizes the young girl isn't cut out for housework. As Rhaenyra brings down the knife, she successfully cuts the cabbage. However, she also cuts the table below it in half, breaking poor Mira's mug in the process. Farah wonders if Rhaenyra never cooked in the guild, so she explains that they had a cook helping them out. Knowing she's got a long road ahead of her, Farah resolves herself to fix Rhaenyra's pathetic housework skills. Feeling embarrassed, Rhaenyra says that she should just focus on swordsmanship, but Farah refuses. She claims that a swordsman can only become strong once they've mastered their mind and body in all aspects. In order to achieve this, Farah tells Rhaenyra to master basic living skills, so she finally agrees. As Farah feels happy that she has another daughter to raise, Rhaenyra wonders where Errol's older sister is. At the mention of their older sister, Mira explains that she left the house after vowing to make the world a better place for classless people. Rhaenyra thinks she's working for a noble cause, but Errol really doesn't need anyone's help. A little while later, after fixing the table Rhaenyra broke, Errol asks his dad to show him some magic. He gets up and fixes Mira's cup with magic before telling Errol to help him store his tools. While they store the tools together, Leo tells Errol to give up on magic once again. He explains the magic requires a special talent called magical energy, which most people lack. Leo thinks that it's unheard of for a classless person to possess any mana. Errol reminds him that he just won a sword tournament without having a class, so he admits that his son can do the impossible. However, Leo tells him that despite his incredible dedication, he can't master magic with hard work alone. He explains that a lack of mana is like missing the limbs to use magic. Errol nods in understanding, but thinks that he does have some magical energy. Leo shakes his head, saying that if he had mana, he would have received the magician class. Despite that, Errol is confident that he has magic. He explains that he discovered the energy when Rhaenyra used to beat him up at Dragon Fang. Leo gets concerned that his son is a victim of domestic violence, but Errol reassures him that it was consensual. While Leo gets even more worried, Errol reveals that during his training to get his guts skill, he used to consume tons of holy water for recovery. Lilia got tired of him emptying the guild's budget, so she got magic potions instead. Rhaenyra wondered if the potions were expired, but Lilia thought they could have been old bottles of holy water too. Errol drank the bottles anyway, thinking that expired medicine would be good training for his internal organs. However, he explains that after drinking the potions, he felt some energy returning to his body. Errol says that the energy was different from the protection blessing, so it could have been magical energy instead. Hearing this, Leo finally feels hopeful that his son can learn magic. He admits he was a bit jealous that his wife was the only one who got to train Errol, but now that he can teach magic to him, he feels happy. Ready to begin training, he asks Errol if he can feel the mana in his body. Errol nods, so Leo asks him if he can move it around. As Errol concentrates, Leo tells him to focus the mana on his palms. After a while of intense focus, Errol brings out a bright glow of energy on his palms. Seeing the successful attempt, Leo is overjoyed, but Errol wonders what he just did. As Leo tells him that he just used mana for the first time ever, Errol falls back in exhaustion. Errol feels disappointed that his energy is so weak, and Leo confirms that he's not even at the level of a child sorcerer yet. However, he tells Errol that he can increase his mana by practicing over and over. Errol feels relieved that he can finally train since he's good at working hard, but he soon passes out from exhaustion. Looking at his son, Leo feels glad that Errol didn't give up despite his warnings. While shedding tears, he feels proud of his son, who has shown him that the impossible is possible. After waking up, Errol heads to a store to buy mana potions. The store lady wonders why he's buying her entire stock, thinking that the potions are for Leo. However, Errol tells her that he's using the potions for himself. Once he has the potions, he starts chugging them like sodas while training every day. After 6 months of training, Errol finally gathers enough magic energy to cast the weakest spells. Leo praises him for his success, but explains that he can't use magic yet. He gives Errol a piece of paper containing weird symbols, which leaves him confused. Leo reveals that the paper is called Magiscript, and that besides having mana, magicians must also learn the magical language to cast spells. Then Leo tells Errol that after he learns a magic skill, the required spell chant will automatically appear in his mind. Errol thinks it's troublesome to create the whole spell upon every cast, and Leo agrees. To help him get started on his magic journey, he suggests studying at the City of Magic school. Seeing Errol's interest in learning, Leo offers to train him for the school's entrance exam. Later, at lunch, Mira praises her mom's delicious cooking. Rhaenyra accepts the compliment, but Mira soon realizes that it was actually her cooking. Jealous, Mira backtracks on her compliment, while Errol also praises the food. Farah thinks that Rhaenyra has grown a lot in both cooking and swordsmanship, and Errol notices how much she likes her. Leo also chimes in, saying that Rhaenyra is a beautiful and hardworking girl. However, this makes Farah angry, so he explains he didn't mean it that way. To cheer up his wife, Leo makes a beautiful heart shape just for her, which explodes into lively firebirds. Watching the glowing birds dance around, Errol feels even more excited to step into the world of magic. After 3 years of intense housewife training, Rhaenyra nervously presents Farah with a cup of tea. As she watches, Farah brings the cup to her mouth before praising her cooking. Relieved, Rhaenyra thanks Farah for all her guidance these years, but suddenly, they hear Mira sobbing loudly. As she comes into the kitchen, crying, Mira reveals that Errol left the house with a letter in his bed. Rhaenyra takes the letter and finds out that Errol left for the City of Magic with no other explanation. While Mira cries because her brother left to get milk, Rhaenyra feels guilty since she has once done the same thing. Suddenly, Farah hugs her, warning her not to leave them like her cold son. Rhaenyra reassures her she won't dip, and Farah wonders why her children turned out like this. Soon, the culprit comes into the room, lazily rubbing his eyes. Farah sighs, thinking it'll all be fine as long as her kids stay safe. Meanwhile, Errol is in a carriage, riding to the City of Magic. He asks the driver how long it will take, and learns that they've got 3 more days to go. The driver asks Errol why he's always jumping from one big city to another, and the passengers get interested in him as well. The kids ask if Errol is headed to the School of Magic just like them, so Errol nods. A boy named Kaito wonders why Errol is applying at such an old age, and his friend Kufa assumes he's just trying the entrance exam again after failing it many times. She tells Kaito not to make Errol feel bad, but Kaito tells her that she just roasted him for failing anyway. While the two of them start arguing, the other girl, Colette, tries to calm them down. In their rage, they ignore her completely, and Errol notes that all 3 of them are wizards. Seeing their young age, he realizes that the kids must have just received their wizard class. Then, Kaito tells Errol that he uses red magic, then curiously asks what type of magic Errol uses. Thinking about his skill, Errol remembers learning from his father that magic is divided into colors based on the elements a wizard uses. However, because Errol didn't receive a magic class for any specific color, Leo told him to try using all of the magic elements. Recalling his experience, Errol tells the kids he's a jack of all trades since he's classless. Kufa laughs, since she thinks there's no way a classless can attend a magic school. Angered by his prank, Kaito tells Errol to stop lying, but he tells him it's the truth. Finally, Errol shows them his class card, which proves that he's classless. Seeing this, Kaito starts mocking Errol for trying to learn magic without a class. Errol sighs, having heard such taunts a billion times already. Suddenly, a creature roars loudly from the forest, startling the carriage horses. The kids get worried about the noise, so Errol explains that it's the sound of a troll king. Terrified of the powerful beast, Kaito tells the rider to rush them out of the forest, but he tells him that the horses are too scared to move. Colette thinks that they're all going to die, but Kufa reminds her that trolls are just slow creatures. Kaito agrees, thinking that they can avoid its attacks to fight back. With her friend's encouragement, Colette nods and agrees to fight. Although the kids are ready to fight, they still gulp nervously as the Troll King approaches. The hideous monster shows its face, and Colette quickly clings to Kufa. Kaito reminds her to be brave, saying that it's not too big to handle. However, as the troll gets closer, suddenly, a massive club knocks it into space. As the kids watch in horror, the real Troll King finally walks out, 10 times larger than the previous one. Finally, all of the young magicians give up any hope of survival. The girls wonder if they can try doing anything with magic, but Kaito quietly steps out of the carriage, trembling with fear. He pulls out his wand, determined to fight to the death. After channeling all of his mana into the wand, Kaito unleashes a powerful fireball at the Troll King. As the blast explodes in the monster's face, the girls think it actually worked. However, it only roars in anger, ready to destroy the pesky kids. The girls realize that Kaito only made the troll even angrier, and he screams that he has already used up all his mana. The Troll King approaches the carriage to attack, but suddenly, a giant explosion spell vaporizes the monster. The kids wonder who defeated it. Meanwhile, Errol pops out of the carriage, thinking that he went overboard with his mana. Kaido wonders if he was the one who cast the spell, and Kyufa points out that explosion is a supreme level red magic. Shocked, Kaido also recalls that only an advanced archmage can use an explosion. Then, Errol walks over to the horses and uses his healing magic. The horses stand back up, and the carriage driver thanks him. Errol asks the driver to show his own skills next time, but he thinks it's too big a hassle. Nearby, Kaido apologizes to Errol for his earlier rudeness, thinking he's a senior magic teacher, and says that from now on he'll be his student. Errol tries telling him he's just a classless mage, but the kids think he's hiding his true identity from them. Seeing them glaze him so hard, Errol thinks he should have just used a sword to avoid suspicion. After everyone calms down, the carriage moves out again. 3 days later, they arrive at a floating island city, pointing towards it. Kaido tells Errol that it's the city of magic, Ulzbel. Surprised by the architecture, Errol gets off the carriage with the kids. Kaido excitedly explains that the bridge connecting the island to the forest is also held up through magic. Watching their friend follow Errol like a dog, Kyufa wonders why Kaido adores him so much. She thinks that he might have used hypnosis magic to control Kaido. Hearing their doubts, Errol feels annoyed that he causes suspicions everywhere he goes. As they enter the city, Kaido asks Errol if he'll apply for the red magic school with him. This surprises Errol, so Kaido explains that all schools are divided based on the color of their magic. Since every element has a different magical language for its spell chants, all the schools have different teachers and syllabi. Kyufa reveals that she'll go to the blue school, while Colette feels nervous about applying to the green school. Realizing that he needs to take an entrance exam, Errol prays that he doesn't get rejected just like he did back in the City of Swords. After parting ways with the girls, Errol and Kaido head over to the Red School of Magic. As Errol hands over his entrance application, the receptionist asks if he entered all his information accurately. He wonders if she's asking him to check his class, thinking that she'll reject him because he's classless. However, she easily approves his application, which surprises Errol. He asks why the school doesn't reject classless people, so the receptionist tells him they give a fair chance to everyone. With their application approved, Errol walks to the examination area with Kaido. After a young man casts a fireball spell, the examiner calls another applicant. He walks up and proudly reveals he's already an advanced mage, shocking everyone with his talent. Errol wonders if an advanced class is that big of a deal, so Kaido tells him they're basically guaranteed to have a successful career. Errol nods, recalling that his father just ended up in the countryside with his exceptional talent. Kaido thinks that the boy is too arrogant, but Errol reminds him that he isn't any better. Soon, the boy burns the test dummy with an impressive eruption spell, leaving the audience stunned. Seeing everyone fawn over him, Kaido starts bragging about his master, which annoys the boy. Errol shuts Kaido's big mouth, making the boy think Errol is afraid of him. While the boy boasts about melting the metal dummy, Errol tells him to look at it again. As he turns around, he finds the dummy intact, much to his shock. The examiner explains that it's made out of powerful mithril, so ordinary attacks can't melt it. Once again, Kaido starts taunting the young mage for his overconfidence, but Errol shuts him up before leaving to attempt his own test. Standing in front of the durable mithril dummy, Errol thinks it's a good chance to go all out and test his abilities. As he charges his spell, the examiner gets surprised. Finally, Errol casts the eruption spell, which just looks like a thin needle pouring on the dummy. Seeing the spell's weak power, the boy starts laughing at Kaido for his boasting. However, the dummy suddenly melts into a puddle, stunning the young man. Since the eruption spell isn't strong enough to melt mithril, the boy accuses Errol of cheating. Errol explains that he condensed the flame into a smaller area to boost the intensity of its heat, which allowed him to melt the mithril. The boy can't believe that Errol is able to modify his magic. Errol starts walking away, and Kaido wonders where he's heading. Errol tells him that he plans to take the entrance exams at the other magic schools too. He soon arrives at the water school, where Kyufa has just passed her test. She's surprised to see him there, so he tells her he'll attempt the exam just like her. Soon, it's Errol's turn to start, and he creates some tough icicle spikes that shatter the mithril dummy to bits. After destroying all of the applicants' hopes and dreams, he turns around to target the green school. There, Errol finds Colette nervously huddled in the corner and asks why she isn't taking her exam. She tells him she's too nervous to even register, saying that she needs moral support to try anything. Errol tells her she needs to take the exam on her own, so she asks how he handles his nerves when he's anxious. Confused, he replies that he has never felt nervous in his life, which leaves Colette shocked. Errol asks her why a person can feel nervous, so she tells him that it comes from the fear of failure. After thinking about her words, Errol asks Colette if she has never failed before. She nods, saying that she fails a lot, which is why she wants to avoid it. Saying that he has also failed many times, Errol wonders why she's scared of it. Colette doesn't understand his words, so he reminds her that even if a person fails sometimes, their life doesn't just end. His simple words stun Colette, and she finally believes believes that even if she fails, she can just try again later. After calming down, she thanks Errol for his help. He smiles and asks her how the Green School's exam works. Colette explains that in order to pass, applicants must make a windmill spin with their magic. With this in mind, Errol registers with her and enters the examination area. There, he focuses his mind and unleashes a tornado spell at a windmill. As the rough winds shred the poor windmill to pieces, Errol realizes it wasn't made out of mithril. The examiner tells Errol he has passed and asks Colette to begin her test. She feels even more nervous taking the exam after Errol's insane show of skill, but he reminds her to calm down. Finally, Colette prepares to take her own test and passes it. While Errol leaves the venue, he heads over to the rest of the magic schools, passing all the exams with flying colors. In the end, Errol heads over to the Black School of Magic, surprised by its ruined building. While walking down the halls, he notices a strange creature in a box. Suddenly, a woman comes over to him, asking if he has seen her pet, Gooey. Errol points to the box, so she quickly takes a strange creature out of it. Happy to have her pet, she proudly brags to Errol that it's a chimera she made inside her lab. Suddenly, a skeleton welcomes Errol to her school, but he slashes off her head by instinct. Errol wonders if she's an undead monster, but the skeleton introduces herself as a normal person called Latalia. Errol wonders how she's walking around as a skeleton and asks how he can take the Black School's exam. Latalia explains that since nobody wants to learn black magic, they don't even take an exam. Although Errol is weirded out by their casual attitude, he decides to join anyway. Afterward, he heads back to the city where Kaido and the girls call out to him. The kids rush to ask which school he'll attend, then immediately start arguing over who gets to claim him. Errol sighs and reveals that he plans to attend all of the schools at the same time. Kaido thinks attending 3 schools at once is already impossible, but Errol then reveals that he'll actually be attending all 6 magic schools in the city. As he counts down from red and blue to white, yellow, and black, the kids feel their world shattered by Errol's insane ambitions. That was episode 7. Subscribe to not miss the next part and watch the next video on screen.